Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to talk about one single idea that can totally change how you approach learning. It's a strategy that turns that feeling of frustration into a real sense of control, and honestly, it can make you a much more successful, self-aware learner.
Yeah, does this sound familiar? You cram for a test, you think you're ready, and then you get a grade back that makes no sense. Or you forget it all a week later. If that's you, you are not alone. But here's the key takeaway. This isn't a sign that you're not smart. It's just a sign that the way you're studying might need a little bit of an upgrade.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into why so many of us feel frustrated. Then, we'll introduce the solution, metacognition. After that, we'll break it down into a really simple three-part cycle: plan, monitor, and evaluate, all leading up to that final goal, becoming a true master learner.
Okay, first up, let's really nail down the core problem. It's something that's become even clearer since the pandemic. Researchers have found this major skills gap, and it's not about what students are learning, but how they're learning it.
I mean, think about it. You go from a super structured high school environment to college, and all of a sudden, you're expected to manage your own learning. The truth is, most of us just aren't taught how to do that. The study habits that worked just fine before suddenly aren't cutting it anymore against these bigger, tougher academic challenges.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. You look at these studies from around the world, in places like the US, France, and Australia. Having good self-regulation skills gives you a small boost. But in China, the effect is way bigger. And the reason is so simple. These metacognitive habits are often taught from a very young age. This is proof positive that this is a learned skill, not something you're just born with.
So, if the old habits aren't working, what's the fix? Well, the key to closing that skills gap is this really powerful but also kind of elegant concept called metacognition. You know, it's easy to hear a word like this and think, oh, just another buzzword. But it's not. Metacognition is a real, active process. It's about literally thinking about your thinking. It means you're in the driver's seat of your own learning. You know where you're going, and you're consciously choosing the best way to get there. At its core, metacognition is really just an internal conversation. It's that little voice inside your head that starts paying attention to what you're good at, what you're not so good at, and asking, hey, is this study strategy actually working? That's the huge difference between just passively soaking up information and actively building your own understanding. So how do we actually do this? Well, we can break this big idea down into a super practical three-step cycle. First, you plan. Then, you monitor while you're working. And finally, you evaluate how it all went. The most important part? This isn't a one-and-done checklist. It's a continuous loop that makes you a smarter, more effective learner over time. It all kicks off with that first step, planning. Think of this as drawing up the blueprint for your success before you even crack open a book. It's all about being intentional from the get-go. A metacognitive learner doesn't just jump in blind. They pause and ask questions like these. What am I really trying to accomplish here? What do I already know so I'm not starting from zero? What's the best strategy for this particular assignment? And, let's be real, how much time do I actually need? Answering these up front just sets you up for success. And check this out. This calendar is a perfect real-world example. It's so much more than a to-do list. It's a battle plan. See how this student has ranked the chapters by how hard they are? They're giving more time to the tough stuff. They even scheduled mental rest days. That shows they get that cramming just doesn't work as well as studying over time. All right, so you've got your plan and you're in motion. Now we hit step 2, monitoring. This is like your mid-flight check-in. It's about being honest with yourself about what you understand while you're learning instead of waiting for a test to find out you were lost the whole time. And you can do this with these simple but super powerful techniques. The muddiest point. I love this one. It forces you to pinpoint exactly what's confusing you. Or thinking aloud, trying to explain a concept out loud to yourself or a friend. That forces you to actually retrieve information, which is way more effective than just passively rereading your notes. You really can't hide from what you don't know when you have to say it out loud. And you know, monitoring isn't always a solo mission. When you have to explain your idea to a classmate or defend your answer in a group, you're doing something called social metacognition.
Just talking through your thought process gives you instant feedback, and most importantly, it makes your thinking visible, not just to others, but to yourself.
Which brings us to our final step in the loop: evaluation. This is what you do after the task is over. It's the post-game analysis where you figure out what went right, what went wrong, so you can be even better next time. This slide right here, this is a huge mindset shift. The typical reaction to a bad grade is just, "Ugh, why did I get this wrong?" But a metacognitive learner asks a much better question. It's not just why, it's how did my study process lead to this mistake? See that shift? It turns a bad grade from a dead end into incredibly valuable data.
A really practical way to do this is with something called an exam wrapper. It's simple. After you get a test back, you take a few minutes to reflect. You ask yourself, which study habits actually worked? Which ones were a waste of time? Where did my mistakes come from? When you start analyzing those patterns, you stop just hoping for a better grade next time, and you start making a real plan to get one.
Okay, so let's tie this all together, because it all builds to this incredibly empowering idea. Becoming a great learner isn't about being born smart. It's a skill that you can choose to build starting today.
I mean, this quote from Natasha Kenny just nails it, doesn't it? This isn't about some innate talent. Metacognition is a skill. And just like any skill, playing an instrument, learning to code, whatever, it's something that can be learned, practiced, and made stronger over time. The power to get better is completely in your hands.
So, here's the challenge for you. Don't feel like you have to do all of this at once. Just pick one thing. Seriously, just one. Maybe after your next quiz, you try an exam wrapper. Or after a confusing lecture, you take 2 minutes to identify your muddiest point. Start small, be consistent, and just build the habit.
And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. We spend all these years learning things: biology, history, math. But what if the single most important thing you could ever learn is simply how to learn? That's the real power of metacognition. It's the tool that lets you become the architect of your own success, not just in school, but for your entire life.